and welcome to the Moving Forward Talk Show. I'm your host, Jennifer Collins, and today I have with me my friend Kristi. Emily is taking a break because she is going to get married very soon, and we're excited for her. So Emily, when you watch this back, you can know we were thinking about you, wishing you all the best. Wish we could be there with you. Here at the Moving Forward Talk Show, we always like to try to demonstrate that life goes on and healing happens as long as you keep moving forward. And so we wanted to bring that idea into the idea of Halloween and see how people have moved forward after leaving their high control group. So we decided to choose a lighthearted topic this week. We have been kind of on the heavier side last time, talking about how to avoid joining a cult. And this time we're going to talk about our experience in a high control group all around Halloween and trick or treat and everything that's going on this time of year all around everywhere in the United States. Now, if you might live in another country, maybe that's not what your tradition is, but here in the United States, trick or treat is huge. Things have been out since like pretty much July 5th. They've started putting out all the decorations, all the candy, because everybody starts to get excited about Halloween. So when you're in a high control group, of course, the leadership feels the need to control pretty much every part of your life, and maybe especially the holidays. So this is one place where lots of people had lots of input into their practice or their celebrations or their non-celebrations of Halloween. So the group that Kristi and I were in, the Message of William Branham, there was not anything very much on record about Halloween. The term trick or treat does not even occur in the recorded sermons of William Branham. But that did not stop church leadership from having a lot to say about the way people celebrated or did not celebrate Halloween. So my journey around that holiday was almost like a roller coaster. So I'm not going to give the whole story all at one time, and I certainly don't want to talk too much at the beginning. So I'm going to let Kristi go ahead and tell us a little bit about her experience, or maybe some of the things she wants to share with us around the holiday of Halloween.
Sure. So I will start. Of course, those of you that have been listening know that I wasn't raised in the high control group that we were a part of. So my early memories of Halloween are pretty typical American Halloween. We would trick or treat, dress up in costumes. My dad liked to decorate the front of our house to be kind of spooky. So I had fairly normal experiences with Halloween growing up. By the time I had come into the high control group, the Message, I was too old to do the trick-or-treating thing, and Halloween had kind of lost its appeal for me. So in the group, in the church that I was a part of in North Florida, nobody celebrated Halloween. Everybody, was bah humbugging it, like, pull the drapes and close the door. I mean, there was definitely a tendency to over spiritualize the occasion and say things like, we don't want to get bad spirits on us because of these, people that are dressed in costumes like superheroes and princesses. I don't know. It just seems a little bit silly now. But there was definitely a lot of that. And then in the group I was a part of in North Florida, we would do like fall celebrations. I guess that was more holy. They would call it like harvest festivals or harvest time like events. And people would dress up in costumes, but the costumes were all like biblical Christian costumes, right? So it was a pretty narrow set of people wearing bed sheets. That was about all of the costuming that you were really permitted to have. There were always a couple of kids that would dress up as like a founding father, or maybe they would dress up as like the group we were a part of. William Branham was like the prophet. There would be people dressed up like William Branham. Just silly stuff. And so the kids got to feel like they did something that was kind of the same as Halloween, but that was definitely like considered the wholesome way to go about doing dress up. I have a picture of me and my husband. I'll send it over, so hopefully I can get added into the video so you guys can see. But me and my husband, before we got married, we went to one of these events at the church, and he dressed up as King David, and I dressed up, I don't even remember which one I was dressed up as, because it's so indescript, right? Like, there's only so many ways you can dress up as like a woman from the Bible. So yeah, that was just like my experience. Halloween was definitely an evil thing, and no good Christian has any business celebrating it. So I know, Jennifer, yours was a little bit different.
So yeah, one thing I notice is that from area to area, from region to region, people had different approaches toward all kinds of different holidays, and I think we'll probably get into Easter sometime. We'll probably get into Christmas sometime. But for right now, we're just talking about Halloween. So I think partly Jeffersonville, Indiana, sort of became a melting pot, or maybe even I've heard the melting pot described as not a great metaphor. Maybe like the American culture is more of like a tossed salad, where everybody's culture sort of mingles, and you can still get a taste of tomato, a taste of onion, a taste of olives, so everybody doesn't lose their individuality, but it's all together. And that's sort of the way trick or treat or Halloween did in this area, because we had people who followed William Branham from all different parts of the globe. So you would have people who had been raised Pentecostal and then became part of the Branham movement, but they were very against Halloween. You didn't do any of that, that you were opening yourself up to evil spirits, as you said. And then you'd have other people who maybe came from, I don't know, the Midwest or someplace where Halloween was just something fun that kids did. And so they would continue to just do the fun things that kids did, especially because William Branham never said, don't let your kids dress up. Don't let your kids go trick-or-treating. And he seemed to be pretty in favor of kids having fun. Once in a while, you'd get a quote about that. So there were people who did that. And my husband's family were among those people who sort of did what they wanted to do, but at least by the time I had children of that age. Now, personally, I was a goody two-shoes. So when I moved here at the age of 21, and the young people were having costume parties where people dressed up as Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz, I was aghast. My jaw was on the floor. I was not going to any such gathering, even though these are my good friends who are going to the gathering and dressing up. I was thankful that I had a class to go to at college, which is funny and ironic because they were probably too prim and proper to go to college, But that's just that's sort of the dynamic that there was in this area when I was a young married person and a young adult person. People just picked what they wanted to, and looked down on other people for picking something else. And in retrospect, it seems awfully arbitrary. It really does.
Yeah, for sure. By the time my kids, because I had littles when I left the message, so by the time my kids were old enough to finally put on a costume, we were of the mindset that we weren't going to do it at all. That was just kind of how we had decided to do things with our kids while we were in the message. But yeah, like I said, my daughter was 3 when we left. So, yeah, not a lot of years there for trick-or-treating, right? So it was kind of like she missed out on her first one, but yeah, we made up for lost time.
Good. So anyways, I do remember being careful, and I would still say to a certain degree I'm careful, because just intrinsically I tend to shy away from things that are bloody, gory, horrific, scary as in terrifying. So that's sort of where I've landed. And there's plenty of room for other people to land other places, but that's just kind of where I am personally. I remember my kids getting so annoyed with me because they wanted to wear something traditionally Halloween. I think as risque as we got was like a vampire, that was like as, that was as evil as you could get right there, was a vampire.
Risky
stuff. And that wasn't in the message. That was after, that was recent.
Oh, man.
And that probably speaks to where mom still has too much responsibility, maybe, for what the decisions that my children make. Because at some point, and I'm doing better in a lot of ways, but probably, I guess this was probably 5 years ago. So, I mean, I left the message in 2012, so 7 years post-message, I still had a lot of baggage. But, I mean, we did a lot of fun stuff, too. I remember going over to a family's house for a Halloween party. It was a few hours away, and we had a family theme. So we all dressed up as Harry Potter characters, and I dressed up as a female wizard. No, I dressed up as a witch who she's able to change shape. So I had this pink hair because she's Nymphadora Tonks from Harry Potter. So, yeah. And of course, Harry Potter, that's a whole nother story, right? There are probably people watching this podcast right now who are aghast that I know who Harry Potter is or any of the characters in the books. But that's a whole other topic. Whenever I was still a Branham follower, I decided that Harry Potter was okay because it was good versus evil. There were a lot of redeeming themes of redemption in the books, and I really didn't think it was wrong to read that. But there probably are people here watching this who do, and they're probably like, oh, she was never in the message. And that's what my brothers say about me. They said, we never thought of you as a message believer.
Oh, no.
And it's hilarious. I mean, I was homeschooling my children, going to the Branham Tabernacle every Sunday, or some other church that we chose to go to, or sitting home and listening to a tape every Sunday. We did one of those things until 2011, I guess, the end of 2011. But I don't know. I didn't think, I thought of myself as pretty much a rule follower. I had no idea I was such a rebel until in retrospect I'm looking back on, yeah, maybe I was pretty much of a rebel.
Yeah, you get that perspective when you leave. Like, you realize, oh man, I wasn't a good message follower, right? Like, I justified a lot of my choices while I was in it, but on the outside, it's like, ooh, you weren't very good at that. No, but when I was growing up, Harry Potter was a big deal. I mean, because the books were coming out as I was, growing up. I went to book releases when I was in middle school and stuff. So I already knew what Harry Potter was before I came into the message, and I knew it wasn't problematic. Like, when you read it, it's just a story, and the magic in it is just a motif to tell the story. And like you said, it's a redemption story. It's got good themes. There's nothing inherently wrong with it, but I think the thing is in the message and in high control groups, in order to control sort of that information that you get, they have to spiritualize things. And one of the things that they spiritualize and try to make serious is any instances of supernatural or magic that occur that isn't biblical miracles taking place. That becomes evil and evidence of witchcraft and true wickedness. So they have to keep it at arm's distance. So yeah, I think that that Halloween and high control groups is just one of those things that, yeah, some people might do the dress up for the little kids, but as far as the things, the scary things, and even carving pumpkins, I don't know if that was something that y'all did, but we definitely, there was teaching from the pulpit about how bad it was to carve pumpkins, how that was inviting spirits. That was the point of a jack-o'-lantern, which I honestly don't even know if that is like where it comes from. Like, I have no idea, but we had to make it like super spiritual, because otherwise, like, how are you going to instill that fear to keep people inside of it, right? You have to make everything outside the walls scary, or how are you going to keep people in?
Well, and this is kind of tangentially related. I don't know, when you were growing up outside of Branham, if you came across Chick Publications tracts. They're little like cartoons, and they're kind of like 3x5 or something. And some people hand those out at Halloween instead of handing out candy.
Oh my gosh. No, I never.
So I thought,
I'm glad I didn't.
Yeah. You don't want, that's a whole rabbit hole you can go down on the internet, and they're still published, I'm sure, today. But growing up, that was something that came into our house, and some of them were actually like life-size comic books and terrifying stuff. But there's a lot of things in there that would go right along with some of my husband's research. Putting the Roman Catholic Church in a really bad light, worse than it even deserved. Making it into like idolatry, making it into demon possession, those sorts of things that I don't think Catholicism deserved, because for centuries all Christians kind of were in the Catholic Church, right?
Yeah.
They were near one. That was all there was. There was only one kind of church. So I think it probably the anti-Catholic sort of approach, I think that was very much in the Chick Publications books. And so they were very anti-Halloween, anti a lot of things, but Halloween, and I don't know either, Kristi. You said you did a little bit of research. Mm-hmm. I know that there's All Hallows Eve, right, and that is the night before All Saints Day, and there was, that was kind of the beginning of trick or treat. I don't know exactly where it came from either. I do know that if you go back far enough in history, you will reach a point where there's a lot of fear of ancestral spirits or evil spirits, and people were trying to ward off evil spirits. And yeah, I don't think that has any place in Christianity at all. So if what I'm doing with my pumpkin, if I in my heart believe that it's warding off evil spirits, instead of me having faith in God to do that and trusting Jesus to send his angels to help me, then I'm wrong, But I'm way past believing that you can accidentally worship demons or accidentally right, draw demons or accidentally do anything like that. I think you have to do it very intentionally. And I think we have enough problems within ourselves, just with sinful desires and selfishness. We don't have to worry about demons, because if we're Christians and we put our trust in Christ, well, then he's the one who's going to guide us. And if if you're a person who has a conscience that it bothers you to do something like that, absolutely don't do it. I'm not saying you better do that. No. Don't do anything that would hurt your conscience ever, because that just puts you in a place of hurt.
Yeah. So when I was researching a little bit, and I might not have this perfectly, but so when the Catholic Church and Christianity first went into the British Isles, the Celtics were there, and they had a holiday. It was called Sanhedrin, which was like the celebration of the harvest and like the change of seasons from fall into winter. And Sanhedrin, the holiday, thought that because of the change in seasons, like the spirits would come out, and so they had a bunch of traditions around appeasing the spirits, like of their ancestors and of different things. And then what the church did is they were like, we are going to convert all of these Celtic people to Christianity. So what we're going to do is we're going to take some of the harmless traditions that they're doing, and we're going to reframe it with a Christian light. And so that's where they have All Saints Day, and then All Souls Day, and then Halloween kind of became the day before that. But the traditions that we know today, like even trick-or-treating, are relatively new practices. Like they developed the way to like let kids have fun on a holiday. So I don't know. I don't really see the problem with harmlessly letting kids go trick-or-treating. I'm kind of like you. I'm not a big like gore and like scary kind of person. When I was a teenager, it became really vogue in Christian churches to do like haunted houses, but they were like hell houses. So it was like, this is what hell is going to be like, and scare the kids straight and like, have an altar call at the end of the haunted house. It was just really weird and probably caused more problems than they solved with those like sort of events. But yeah, so I don't know. I feel like all of that scary stuff is just not, I don't know. It's not something that I want to do. It's not an interest of mine. And it's certainly not kid-friendly, in my opinion. I don't want my 3-year-old to be terrified on Halloween. But if he wants to dress up as Batman riding a dinosaur, which is his plan this year, I don't see anything wrong with that, He dresses up as stuff all the time. So now we're going to dress up, and he's going to go around to our neighbors and get candy from them. There's just no sort of inherent problem with that in my estimation.
I'm definitely with you on that. I wanted to tell some stories from my childhood. I remember my very first memory of the holiday of Halloween. My family went to visit my cousin, who was about a year older than I was, in the city. So we were country folk. We lived where you could ride your tricycle for 5 minutes and not hit another house. There was no sidewalk. You were on a road. Thankfully it was paved. Otherwise it would have been gravel. But there wasn't a lot of trick-or-treating that went on out in the country like that. But we went to visit my cousin in the city, and it was trick-or-treat night. And I think my parents were a little surprised that it was trick-or-treat night. I don't remember them saying that they had planned to come for trick-or-treat. But my cousin had an outgrown trick-or-treat Halloween costume, and I was allowed to wear it, and it was a little Bobo the Clown or something like that with a little mask. And I was sort of shocked at age 4 that it had legs in it. And I was like, Mom, is that okay? And she's like, well, it's just like your pajamas. You wear your little pajamas with the feet in them. It's just like that. Oh, and I just remember laughing hilariously, thinking it was so funny that I was wearing this clown outfit, and we got to go trick-or-treating and get all the good candy, and that was so fun. But I don't think any of my little brothers ever got to go trick-or-treating. I don't know that any of them ever did, because we lived out in the country, and then why would we go to a lot of trouble for something that might sort of kind of not be okay, even though we didn't have anybody telling us it wasn't okay, because we were just tape listeners, and it's not on there not to do that. So I remember having reverse trick-or-treat. So my aunt was not in the high control group at all, and so she would dress up. I don't know, she'd dress up as like a scarecrow or a clown or Raggedy Ann or something like that, and she would go and get candy and bring it over to our house and reverse trick-or-treat us and bring us the treats.
That's cute.
So that was another happy memory of growing up. Yeah. But our churches were, non-existent pretty much where I grew up. So there was no question of having like a harvest festival or a costume party or anything like that. This just wasn't going to happen because there was nobody there. Finally, I think maybe when I was 16, we started going 45 minutes away to a church, but there weren't very many people there either. I think they had a hayride one year. That was fun, and a bonfire and some s'mores, all that good stuff. Roast hot dogs over the bonfire. That was fun. I remember doing that.
Yeah, I don't really see I don't ever think of those things as like traditional Halloween things. They're just like fall fun things to do, So it's still really like weird to me that there's still so many people in fundamentalist groups that don't particularly enjoy like just kind of like the harmless things around Halloween, like the trick-or-treating and the dressing up in costumes. Even if you're not doing it like going door to door, because I know that's kind of its own thing. There's a lot of churches that do trunk or treats, like where it's just church members giving candy to the kids that go to the church. So all of that seems very harmless.
Yeah, and I think in our area, a lot of churches use that as an outreach to
Right.
try to show, the people around them that they're approachable and kind, and a fun place to go sometimes. And then, that helps them sort of expand their boundaries a little bit and have more people come. And people maybe who just moved into the neighborhood and they're trying to figure out where they're going to go to church. Well, that church down the street, they have this really cool fall festival or this really cool trunk or treat or whatever. We could try that place, so
In Jefferson,
one way.
In Jeffersonville, when they would have trick or treating, the people that did do that, were the costumes more sort of like less traditional Halloween costumes, or was it kind of a free for all? How did that go down?
So, well, yeah, in our family, and I have been very transparent about the fact that we had the big screen TV and we went to see movies in theaters, and yeah, we homeschooled, but that was kind of because that was the education style that I liked, not because I didn't want my kids around other kids. But yeah, pretty much, except for me having my hang up about blood, gore, and evil. We had Star Wars characters, we had superheroes. I remember a zombie princess from one of the cousins, who has since grown up not to be a Branham follower. But pretty much anything anybody wanted to be was okay. But I remember when there was a sort of local religious establishment endorsed gathering. It was a certain person who put this gathering on, and her children were about the same age as my children. And I remember getting invited to it by phone, sort of third hand, from someone who thought I should be invited and thought I hadn't been, and I wasn't. And I was told that how it was to be, you were to only bring your child in like a Bible costume or maybe a church age messenger costume. Those were the only acceptable costumes. Maybe, something like maybe it was something William Branham had mentioned, if it was someone he had mentioned like D.L. Moody, your child could dress up as that, or one of the cowboys or something that William Branham mentioned on tape. That would be okay. But it was very strict. So for that gathering, I had my son put on his shepherd outfit from his Christmas play because, he wasn't wearing his Spider-Man costume or his Darth Vader costume to that gathering.
Yeah, the costuming was definitely limited, right? Like, there's not that many choices you can make.
Not in that kind of setting. Now, we weren't like, I will definitely look up the picture of my sons, my first and second son, when my first son was wearing his little Spider-Man costume and he was 4, and my second son was a newborn in his little Winnie the Pooh outfit, because that is so adorable. And we put that on, went over to Granny's house. My mother-in-law, she had made little orange sugar cookies, I think, to look like little pumpkins or something. But we had our own little private celebrations. And we did, the way you do with your kids when you aren't trying to be over the top controlling.
Right. Just let them have a fun night, and experience like this nice tradition. I still remember the first Halloween costumes that I bought for my kids after we left the message. My daughter wanted to be a superhero, but she wanted to be a pink superhero. And I was like, I don't think there are any pink superheroes. So I looked it up. I just went to Google and typed in pink superhero, and I found like this Barbie brand, like superhero costume. And I was like, that's the one. So that's what she was. And then my son was too little to tell me, but I found at like the thrift store this adorable like dragon costume. And it's just like got the head over the top of it and his like little face is out of it. Oh, it was so cute. So yeah, it's just fun every year, especially when they're little, to like dress them up as cute as can be. So I'm still trying to figure out my new baby. He's going to be like 4 months old or 3 months old for Halloween. So I don't know what I'm going to dress him up as, but somebody suggested maybe a kangaroo like me and him, because he'll be in like the baby carrier. So it can be like he's in my pouch. So that would be fun. I dressed up my 3-year-old, his first Halloween, he was the old man from the movie Up, because he could like hold on and like push something. So I made him a little like walker. And yeah, he never did use the walker thing, but he was so cute. Yeah, it's just a lot of fun. But our neighbors love seeing the kids all dressed up and having that special time, like to see all the kids on that day. They don't get like, my kids don't go visit the neighbors all the time. So it's just, it's a nice little tradition.
We have, we live toward the end of a dead-end street, and we do not get very many trick-or-treaters. I will park myself out on the front sidewalk with a folding chair and candy in my lap, and then sometimes the people who are 2 or 3 doors down, where there's a road that turns onto our street, they'll go ahead and run down to my little station. But otherwise, I don't get to give away much candy. It just kind of depends on the weather too. But we did have one other family theme that we did, and that was a Marvel theme. And I wasn't able to find anything that was flattering for myself in the way of the female Marvel characters. But I did decide to go ahead and be Groot. So I was a tree.
Yeah,
but
that's cute.
That gave my kids a chance to dress up as what they wanted to be. That was Marvel related.
Yeah, I've tried the themes. I've tried to do like family themes, and I always have a dissenter. Like one of my kids is like, I'm not dressing in that theme. So, oh well, they can just choose all their own costumes. I'm not choosing for my 13-year-old.
So a lot of our conversation tonight, Kristi, has been around the fun traditions that people do with their families during Halloween, dressing up, going trick-or-treating, decorating, and so forth. But one thing that is ironic is that though they try to stay away from the popular culture with the trick-or-treat and the Halloween costumes and so forth, the people in our high control group had lots of scary things in their lives besides chick tracts. They had ghosts, for example. I remember hearing people tell ghost stories. They actually believed in ghosts. They would say that they had seen an old man walking down the road, and they believed that was a ghost of someone who had passed on, someone who wasn't saved or something like that. I don't know. Is that common everywhere, or is that a Jeffersonville thing? Kristi, what do you think?
So I'd never heard any ghost stories specifically that anybody sort of like tried to play off as anything more than their own suspicions, but there was always talk of spirits. There was spirits on this and spirits on that. There were people who wouldn't even buy used clothing at a thrift store because they were sure that it would come with evil spirits from whatever that had owned it prior. So just everything was so scary. There were definitely people who said that they would see spirits at night and just things like that. Even the cult leader, William Branham, he would admonish all of his followers, if he was doing a healing service, to not open their eyes during the prayer, or the demons that he was having leave the people that were getting healed would come into you, because the demons could get in through your eyes, and just all this crazy, really sort of fear-mongering amongst the populace for really innocuous things and for no good reason. I think it was just, I don't know, boredom maybe that caused it, or if it was just trying to keep people's attention. I don't know exactly what the rationale for that is, other than just over spiritualizing things that aren't inherently spiritual.
I know there was definitely a lot of talk about how you could get demons accidentally jumping on you. As a matter of fact, once we had left the Branham movement, there were certain people we knew were not going to come around us because they were afraid that our spirit would jump on them and make them not believe in William Branham. So that, that has a big impact on a person's life when they're so scared that someone they're going to go around could sort of rub an evil spirit off on them or something. I remember a lot of scary stories. Of course, there are also scary stories in the Bible if you want to go that way. But one that was told by William Branham a lot was about the man from Windsor, who was a man who was supposedly a skeptic and had written something on his prayer card that wasn't true to test William Branham and see if he was only knowing what was on the prayer card or if he actually knew what was wrong with people. And William Branham claimed to have told him what was on his prayer card and that he didn't have it, but that from then on he did have it. Of course, that's one of those stories that famously changed over the years. Mm-hmm. So sometimes this man fell down dead immediately. Sometimes he got cancer. Sometimes he got tuberculosis. Sometimes he was still alive. Sometimes he ran from the building screaming. You knew that the story wasn't true if you paid attention because it was never the same from one telling to the next. And I've heard people say, well, what difference did it make what happened to the man? He wasn't, he was not in a happy condition at any rate. But the fact is, when you're telling a story to scare someone, you just stretch it out of proportion.
Yeah, you make it as scary as possible. Who cares what actually happened, right? If it had actually happened, wouldn't you want to be accurate in your portrayal and not just try to scare everybody in the audience with something like that didn't actually happen? Like, you'd want to be accurate about it. I also remember he told this story of like seeing people in hell, and it was just like this thing that makes you never ever want to go there. Like, you got to be sure to like make sure that you're never going to go to hell because it's so scary. I remember thinking, like, when I was sitting in the services and hearing this, it's like, I bet this is like nightmare fodder for like the little kids that are sitting here, because he would describe it in such vivid details, like things that I right now with small children I would never want them exposed to. I don't want my kids to go to bed scared. So it's just a strange dichotomy to be so anti Halloween on the basis of all of this scary evil spirits, and then to talk about it and have it so out in front and center in your worldview within the high control group. I think there's probably some really interesting takeaways we can make from that. But yeah, it's
in the story, when he told that story, he always talked about the women who had just come from the makeup counter and how the blue and green eyeshadow that they had used reminded him of what he had seen when he had the vision of hell. And it's, again, such an innocuous thing. A little bit of eyeshadow, and it's turned into some huge, horrific, hellish, demonic thing when it's really not. It's just a little bit of eyeshadow, which I don't necessarily care for blue and green eyeshadow myself, but, I think it's cute on other people when they wear it.
Yeah, I don't think that a lot of people are wearing like that bold of a eyeshadow color anymore. Like, I haven't seen a whole lot of people wearing blue and green eyeshadow around lately, but yeah, it definitely was a fashion and a style for a while. So,
well, and for those of you who wonder where I have landed with my theology and so forth, in my understanding of Jesus and the Bible and God's nature, some of the things that were taught in the Middle Ages about hell, they don't jive with what I know about God, about him being just. I don't see him, like one thing that is frequently put out in the Middle Ages is like, like demons are given the pleasure of torturing lost souls. That doesn't make sense to me. Why would God reward an evil being by giving them pleasure to hurt someone, who wasn't saved or whatever? So that's maybe a different path that someone's brain hasn't gone down yet. But if you go down that path, think about what the Bible says about hell. It doesn't say anything about demons torturing people. That is something that was made up in the Middle Ages by men with big imaginations. And probably, maybe even men who, were directly involved in the Spanish Inquisition, right? Because once you see what men can do to men, you can only imagine what a supernatural being could do. And that's horrific, again, if you want to think about it. But then those are the real scary things, Little kids dressing up as superheroes and going and getting trick-or-treat candy, that's not scary to me. But what human beings can do for power and control, that's really scary. That's what's scary right there.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So another interesting and scary topic is witch doctors and seances. And William Branham used to talk about witch doctors quite a bit. Whenever I did my research for this topic, and I looked up Halloween, I was surprised that it was mentioned only one time in all of the times that William Branham was talking. He only mentioned the word Halloween one time. And it wasn't necessarily in a huge negative light. He was talking about society being insane in general and children being taken over by demons, and saying what we used to do at Halloween, like put someone's cart on top of the shed or something, that's nothing compared to what is happening today. So he was talking about an old-fashioned Halloween prank in sort of a neutral or a positive light, compared to where he was demonizing whatever the culture was at the time he was saying it, which was, of course, 70 years ago. So there we are again with the demonization of the people around you. But he talked a lot about witch doctors. And I remember him telling a story about being overseas somewhere and having a witch doctor who was trying to cast a spell on his meeting. And the witch doctor, of course, was not successful, and the meeting was successful. And even though, we don't know about these healings that supposedly took place, William Branham was very positive about the many thousands of people who were healed in this location where this witch doctor was trying to come against him.
Yeah, I remember the stories of him going to seances and going to like spiritual camps, and he talked about things levitating around the room during the seance and whatever. It seems like he was very anti anybody else doing it but him. It was like do what I say and not what I do, because he definitely had and it wasn't uncommon during the 1950s and 60s to be fascinated with the supernatural, like spirits and whatnot, and to be interested in seances and Ouija boards and witch doctors and all of that. It was common cultural stuff, and William Branham clearly indulged himself in his interests in that, and then demonized it for everybody else to like have any sort of even tangential interest in things like that. So yeah, it's he seemed to think that they were real too, which is also kind of interesting to me, because now, we know from research that's been done that a lot of the seance, like spiritualist camps that existed in the 1950s and 60s were just, side tricks. They had like strings attached to items on the table that would levitate them up. But yeah, it's definitely something they wanted to make demons and spirits seem real to the people, to scare them into submitting to the theology that was being sold to them in the high control group. And fear is a strong motivator. It really is. William Branham definitely used that. I think that's pretty common amongst high control groups. I'll be interested to see if any of our viewers have similar experiences in other groups as well, because I think this is probably something that happens in a lot of places where they just they say that all this stuff is evil and that you should try to stay away from it. But really what it's ultimately doing is trying to other you from the culture at large, make you feel like you're included into this one little bitty special group and everybody else is othered and we can't associate with anybody else because we know what really happens in the spiritual warfare out there. So yeah, I'm glad to be free of all of that thinking.
Yes. I remember one thing, you were talking about everything around you being controlled and being spiritualized. And I remember one thing was certain names. There were certain names that were not allowed. For example, the name Ricky was not allowed in our high control group. The name Elvis. I'm trying to remember. It seemed like there was another one. But basically, William Branham said you should change your child's name if they were named that name. So this actually happened to people. They would come to this high control group and they would change their child's name just because William Branham didn't like the name. Or he said that he would use numerology and say that it meant something. Like he said that Ricky meant a rat and Elvis meant a cat based on the numerology of the letters in the name, which I'm not even sure that that's true, but at any rate, how much more controlling can you get than to say what a child should be named or what a parent should name their child?
Right. And keeping cats, in our high control group, keeping cats was not a thing, like to have a pet cat, because they were evil. They had bad spirits on them. You shouldn't have a pet cat that's been kept for generations and generations of people have kept pet cats, but you can't because it's going to invite evil spirits. I think that's pretty common though. Like that's been associated with witches for a really long time. There's always been people that are like anti-cat because of that, but I didn't think that like, connotation had, prevailed into the 50s. I think maybe he just didn't like cats.
Yeah, maybe his daughters wanted to have a kitty cat around. That sounds likely.
It's bad evil spirits.
Yes, right. And there comes my rebellion again because I was a person who would have a kitty cat anytime. I remember there was a time when I was young, married, and I had two babies that I had miscarriages, and my husband felt sorry for me, and even though he's deathly allergic to cats, he let me get a little cat, and we had a little cat until we ended up needing to give her a new home because there was another cat in the neighborhood who was sick. But that was me. I mean, if William Branham said something and it didn't make sense to me, I kind of just ignored it.
That's good. I mean,
yeah.
It's just like a little bit less high control that you allowed to take over your life,
Exactly.
Yeah, there was definitely a lot of fear mongering, which is just bizarre when you sit back and you think about all the things like that were innocuous that we missed out on because of the evil spirits, and then you go in Sunday morning and you hear about all of the demons in hell, and they look like the ladies at the makeup counter. It's just strange.
It is. It's surreal. And looking back, it's and yet there are people listening to this podcast probably who thought that way a month ago, who maybe still think that way a little bit. And and just because I was a rebel, not everybody was a rebel. Kristi came into the group from outside the group and just embraced it, for everything she knew, to try to do the right thing. And but in the end, if you find that you don't want to follow this high control group because you find that there are things about it that aren't true, there are things about it that don't ring healthy with you, things that feel off, things that just make you think, ooh, really, is that right? And when you decide that it isn't right, well, you just move away from that and you start to investigate a little bit and you start to make some friends who aren't part of that group anymore. And eventually, you'll heal and you'll find yourself not in a place where you are being controlled by someone else again.
Right. Yeah. All that fear that sort of like bred into you, that you're made to feel like if you leave, all of this scary is just going to come at you. That fear does dissipate over time. It can take more time. It depends on the specific thing that's causing the fear. Some of it lasts a little bit longer, but I almost right after leaving the message, I didn't have any concerns that demons were going to get onto my kids for opening their eyes during a prayer in a church service. Like stuff like that, it becomes so clear that it was done for a nefarious purpose, which was to scare you into staying. That it's something that you can overcome and you can shed with time.
Yeah. That reminds me of the statement, which is a scripture quote that's at the front of the Branham Tabernacle. If you go there today on their Wednesday nights where they go in and have silent prayer, you would see this placard still above the platform. It says, "Be still and know that I am God." But it's actually a misinterpretation, because the "be still" there in the context in that high control group is to be quiet and to sit still in church. And that's really not what God was getting after at all. If you go into modern translations, that psalm actually is talking about like resting, like trusting God, like not having to worry and scramble and try to protect yourself because God is protecting you. And it's like the opposite of fear, right? It's like the fear of God is not the kind of fear where you're scared. It's the kind of fear where you know that He is the ultimate one that's there for you, that you can rely on. And that's just such a comforting thought compared to like, sit still and be quiet.
Yeah.
So thank you for listening. We hope you found our show informative and helpful. Feel free to contact us at movingforwardtalkshow.com with any questions you may have or ideas for future shows. If you have stories you'd like to share with us about your experience in a high control group. We both look forward to hearing from you as we continue to demonstrate that life goes on and healing happens as long as you keep moving forward.